Hello, welcome to the Basketball Soapbox. I'm your host, Daniel Daly. Thank you guys for joining me. It is literally 3 o'clock in the morning, but there's a lot of basketball to be talked about, a lot of things going on in the NBA, and I just figured I had to talk about it because a lot of moving parts here, especially starting off here when we're talking about the NBA offseason 2024. The NBA draft is next week. Coaches are getting fired. Coaches are getting hired. Teams are actually now making trades and signings. And I just wanted to get into one thing to start it off here, and that is the Lakers are right hiring JJ Redick. Now, people are going, this is a crazy move. He's only getting this job because he's cool with LeBron. What experience does he have? Are there better options? Number one, I'm going to say this. The number one reason for the Lakers being right for hiring JJ Redick is because, number one, they have nothing to lose. They literally have nothing to lose. LeBron James is in the final years of his twilight career. They're trying to figure out how to win a championship and maximize his career. Anthony Davis is on the verge of either staying in, staying out, especially with LeBron's timeline. You're trying to figure it out. The one thing that the Lakers have had issues with is sustaining coaches over the past couple of years, especially since the departure of Phil Jackson. No Lakers coach has made it throughout 3 years since Phil Jackson has been fired. Since Phil Jackson resigned and left and retired, I should say. Mike Brown didn't last. Mike D'Antoni didn't last. Frank Vogel didn't last despite winning a championship. Darvin Ham is the latest one to be fired. Now, let's look at it, those guys. Byron Scott is another one who's also been fired in the past. Both, ironically, Byron Scott and Darvin Ham lasted 164 games for the Los Angeles Lakers. Now, out of those coaches, who was the coach with some cachet, some staying power? You would say Mike Brown and Mike D'Antoni. Mike Brown led the LeBron James Cavs to the finals, had a long tenure coach there, Greg Popovich tree. Very good sign but was just in over his head for what the Lakers needed at this time. Looking at Mike D'Antoni, who had cachet with the Phoenix Suns, successful there, got to Western Conference Finals. Steve Nash, two-time MVP, led that whole offense. Ended up going to Houston with James Harden, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So those guys have cachet. But Byron Scott always rubbed the media the wrong way. Darvin Ham rubbed the media the wrong way. Frank Vogel is not the most vocal guy in that terms of fitting the LA spotlight and seen and what they need. So who is somebody that can carry that torch, who has been in the media for the past couple of years, face-wise, has his own productions with 321 Productions, has his own podcast, Cool LeBron, and has a mind for the modern NBA. Now you're thinking about other guys that they try to go after. Dan Hurley, who was the coach of the UConn Huskies, who I thought made a smart decision and went back to coach college basketball. Mike Budenholzer took the Phoenix job. James Borrego was out there. Charles Lee went to Charlotte. Monty Williams, who recently just got fired. I'm going to talk about that later. People are looking at him. And I'm like, all those other guys don't fit what the Lakers are looking for. Obviously, they want to coach with a little prestige. Guys that come to mind, Mike Brown had prestige coaching LeBron. Mike D'Antoni, Frank Vogel with his defensive schemes in Indiana. Something there. The one thing that JJ Redick has going for him is that he has been in the media for the past couple years, face front, on TV, getting comfortable with his podcast, sitting across from LeBron James, explaining the game in depth in his podcast, on the LeBron James podcast with him, Mind of the Game, in the Old Man and the Three podcast. JJ Redick has been in that spotlight in terms of talking the game of basketball, understanding his role as an NBA player for 15 years, stops in Orlando, Clippers, Dallas, Philadelphia, New Orleans. So he's been around the league, understands his role, and especially shooting in today's modern NBA. That's another thing. Now, people are saying that other coaches, he doesn't have any coaching experience. That's fine. There have been a list of coaches that have had no coaching experience and did just fine. Larry Bird comes to mind with the Indiana Pacers in 97-98. Got them to the NBA Finals and stepped away. And he said coaches only have 3 seasons. Ironically, for the Lakers, that's kind of the system they're using. And he got them to the NBA Finals with Reggie Miller, Jalen Rose, Rick Smits, and those boys there before departing. Doc Rivers, who was a color commentary. And the best thing that happened for Doc was that he was on NBC broadcasts and ABC broadcasts. discussing the game in length. I always remember the call that he had when Tayshaun Prince ran down Reggie Miller for the block, and then that eventually got him into the Orlando job. Well, after that, into the Orlando job and stuff like that. And he won Coach of the Year, had T-Mac. That whole franchise went amok. Went to Boston, won a championship, had successful runs with the Los Angeles Clippers, despite not winning a title. But ultimately, you showed that he had no coaching experience and went into there. And honestly, ironically, Pat Riley told him he was going to get into coaching and be a good coach. Doc Rivers is one of the best coaches historically, despite 3-1 blown leads. Whatever you want to say, that's another one. Jason Kidd. He started out rough with the Bucks and the Nets, and everyone remembers the whole water cup incident in the Brooklyn Nets where he was able to draw up a winning play and got an extra play in to help win the game. He just coached in the NBA Finals. Looking at here, J.J. Redick is going to be the next guy on that list. Steve Nash comes to mind as well in his tenure in Brooklyn. Despite whatever everyone says, he did have a winning record. It wasn't the most smooth sailing for Steve Nash as he's out of coaching right now. But ultimately, I think this works for J.J. Redick and the Lakers. They have nothing to lose. This is a guy who has a modern brain for the modern NBA today, who can probably connect with players, who has talked to a bunch of players, has been in a smaller role, and honestly has a long prestige, has one of the best players in Duke history, has a long storied career, has been on TV again. I'm saying that again for a reason, because PR purposes. Darvin Ham, Frank Vogel probably didn't handle the media the best way and answer it the right way. J.J. Redick is going to have enough cachet and bluntness with the media to be like, yo, get the fuck out of here. I know what you're doing. He's been in the media. And that's one thing the Lakers are looking to do, is to cool off heads that do that nature. Now, the one thing that the Lakers have had struggles with is shooting. Their offenses look stagnant at times. What are they going to get to? I think J.J. Redick has been watching them from afar for a long time and understands what they need to do going forward. LeBron James is in the twilight of his career. Anthony Davis needs to be the focal point. You guys got like Austin Reeves, Rui Hachimura. They need to figure out what they're doing with D'Angelo Russell, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. There's some holes on this Lakers plot point. But again, what do they have to lose? Everyone has been saying this is a lame duck situation for any coach that takes this job. They didn't get the numbers for J.J. Redick, which is 4 years. But ultimately, I don't think this is a bad move for the Los Angeles Lakers. I do not think it is. Because what are you going to do? What coach is out there? People are acting like these coaches are just out there. Like Greg Popovich is available. Like Phil Jackson is available. Like all these great coaches, like Eric Spoelstra is available. Notice that Dallas extended Jason Kidd, so there wouldn't be any flirtation with that. The Clippers extended Tyronn Lue, so there's no flirtation with that with the Lakers. So they took away those two best options for them, who have history with LeBron James and the Lakers. What else are you going to do? Who else is out there? You're going to hire an assistant. I like James Borrego. I think he's going to be able to take the Detroit Pistons jobs, which I'll be talking about later. But overall, who else are you going to get? Why not take a swing in the dark? Why not take a swing in the dark? And I feel like J.J. Redick is going to fit good with the Lakers, and I don't think it's going to be a short-term thing. I don't think it's going to be a burnout thing. I think it's going to be an experiment for everybody, and I think J.J. understood the risk of doing that. He has a cushy job on TV. He has a podcast. But obviously he has been flirting with coaching. He's interviewed for the Charlotte job, I believe. People are sitting there saying why he was going to look at the Detroit job. I didn't think so. Nobody wants to go to Detroit. Unless it's a reclamation project and you're a young coach trying to get a job. I don't think J.J. Redick wants that at this point. I think he wants a job that has prestige, cachet, the limelight, and that's what he's basically going to be doing. He signed up for that just now. Again, I just don't understand what people are saying in terms of other coaching decisions, and I'm just like, why not J.J. Redick? Why not? LeBron has a couple years left. If this works, or at least make successful runs to the Western Conference Finals, have a good showing, show some pizzazz, show some evolution of the young guys like Austin Reeves, Max Christie, et cetera, et cetera. He's going to try to maximize those guys and understand what this team needs, especially on the offensive end. I think something that's been missing, especially with Frank Vogel, even though they changed the roster with Frank Vogel. So let me say that first of all. But ultimately, I think it's a good move for the Lakers. What do they have to lose? What do they have to lose? On one hand, they don't shell out $13 million to a coach to bring him in and try to make it seem like he's going to have the power and stuff like that. J.J. Redick is going to be a player's guy. He's been a player's guy in the media. He's been favorable to those guys. and is going to have a brain and say, hey, let's try working on this. Let's see what works here. Let's see what he's going to experiment and try to tinker with this roster and try to make it work. And I think that's the best thing for the Lakers. They need somebody who's fresh, young. He's only 39 years old. Let's see what he can do. And I don't think that's a bad move for the Lakers. I don't think they had any other options. I don't think they had better alternatives that people were saying and trying to get out there. I don't think so. Why not take a shot with J.J. Redick and see what he's doing? He's looking at Rajon Rondo for his staff. I think that's another player empowerment move into coaching, it looks like. But ultimately, I think it's a good move. Let's move on to the Chicago Bulls trading Alex Caruso for Josh Giddey, making half sense. Making half sense. And here's why. And this is why Chicago Bulls fans, looking at it from the outside as a person that's looking at this team that should rebuild, and this is a part of that, right? Josh Giddey's a young guy. I believe he's only 21 years old. He's in the second or third year in the league, and you trade him for Alex Caruso. Josh Giddey, who just got played off the floor in the playoffs. I understand why people will look at that and be like, why are we trading for this guy? But he is able to score. He just doesn't, he's not able to shoot. He lost his confidence in his game a little bit last season. But overall, he can pass. He can score a little bit. Defensively is not his forte. He can say he's kind of like Ben Simmons without the defense, but he's at least has a scoring prowess that he has there. Let's try to just build on that as a Chicago Bulls team who's looking to hopefully rebuild. But in order to rebuild, the one thing that you got to do as a Chicago Bulls is get fucking picks. That's the one thing in this trade that doesn't make any sense. And this is why teams like Chicago, Indiana for a long time before recently, Detroit, Toronto, Orlando for a long time before they started getting Paolo and Franz and stuff like that, why these teams are stuck in purgatory and being mid. Being mid in the NBA is not good. It's not good. Let's be honest. Being mid in the NBA, Chicago Bulls have been mid for probably since Derrick Rose was there. I know they had that little flirtation there with Lonzo Ball and Alex Caruso in the backcourt. Unfortunately, Lonzo got hurt, and they were number one seed at that point, and they went downhill. But ever since then, they have been making moves that just don't make any sense. And trading 2 first rounds for Vucevic, extending Zach LaVine, potentially right now extending DeMar DeRozan. These moves have shown that there is no progression. You're still a playing team. And not getting any picks in this trade for Alex Caruso, who you should at least try to get 2 first-round picks for. They end up getting no picks. Now, for Chicago, they can be looking at Josh Giddey and saying, hey, this is our draft pick. We know what this guy is. We know what he can potentially be. Let's build on that. And for OKC, who missed on the Gordon Hayward trade, Sam Presti did say that, acknowledged that was a miss and that just didn't work out. Maybe this trade should have happened before the trade deadline because Alex Caruso was available. OKC definitely needed to make some improvements, especially on the front line. They were probably searching for the big and didn't get it. So they thought, get it forward. Alex Caruso can do what Gordon Hayward does at a better level and shoot the ball. I believe he was 4th in three-point shooting this year. So looking at it from that standpoint, that works out great for OKC now because now they can sign an extension. I believe it's 4 years, $80 million for Alex Caruso, which works good. He fits that role there. He's going to fit like a glove in OKC. And now as for Chicago, did you even ask for picks? Did you ask for picks? Because that's the one thing that they desperately needed. Especially a team that traded 2 first-round picks for Vucevic, who ended up being Franz Wagner in the draft, who they could have desperately needed in Chicago. But ultimately, in asset retention, asset claiming in trades and stuff like that, despite getting Josh Giddey for nothing, for Alex Caruso, why didn't you get any picks? You didn't ask for any picks, at least 1 first-rounder in this trade. Alex Caruso is a commodity around the league. A point guard who can in ball handle and create, a point guard that can shoot, a point guard that can defend in this league, all-NBA defensive team. Why wouldn't you get some picks for him which helps your team move forward. Whatever sign-in trade you're getting with Zach LaVine that you're trying to explore, who's coming off an ACL injury, what are you going to get for him? DeMar DeRozan, who instantly should be a sign-in trade. They have Kobe White. you get Josh Giddey, and you get your picks, and you start the rebuild. But these teams here like to just try to make the playoffs and be a play-in team and make home revenue money. Okay, cool. And then you get eliminated, and then you don't win. It's being stuck in mediocrity for the Chicago Bulls, and that's what they're going to continue to do. Lonzo Ball is upright off his surgery knee and stuff like that. But ultimately, what are you doing with that? You just signed Zach LaVine, who you're already looking to trade, which seems to be the move in the NBA when you want to move on from a superstar and you make a trade. You sign him and you make a trade. Hopefully you get some picks for him. Hopefully no one's afraid of that contract. Hopefully someone like Philadelphia takes a swing on that. Maybe Miami. You try to get somebody to do that. DeMar DeRozan, you sign for an extension for 3 to 4 years and try to flip him. Nikola Vucevic is on the team. Kobe White just signed an extension, what works for them. Ayo Dumaso, who's also a backup point guard, I think is pretty good. Outside of that, who is on this team that is making any noise for you guys? Patrick Williams was a bust. Patrick Williams has not panned out. I don't know how many eggs are in that basket or whatever there is, and what's the future of him. He's up for a contract extension. I don't think they're going to do that. But Chicago just stays in mediocrity. And it's moves like this for franchises that just don't make no sense. Now, is Josh Giddey going to be good for Chicago? I believe so, because having Kobe White there, having Josh Giddey there, having multiple creators, we just saw it with Dallas, we just saw it with Boston. You want to have guys that can have creation on that side of the floor to maximize your offense. Obviously, they're going to have to add some shooting, get a little bit more modernized. But Chicago, you already fucked up. You didn't get any draft picks. That's the number one thing, especially with OKC, who has like 36 over the next 5 drafts. Like, that's the thing for me. Like, OKC has at least 39 picks over the next 5 drafts. And you didn't get one? Not one? Not one draft pick in this trade. And this is the thing that is just like, okay, like, don't sit there and tell me that Alex Caruso, especially with this weak draft that's coming up, you guys couldn't get multiple picks. And guys, I don't know. I don't know what Chicago's doing. Hopefully they're not trying to re-sign DeMar DeRozan and bring him back. Hopefully they're not trying to keep Zach LaVine. This should be every indication that you guys should move on. Having Josh Giddey, Kobe White, having multiple picks would have been a better situation. But it is what it is, man. I don't know. I don't know what they're doing. I don't know what they're doing. But Chicago, I feel sorry for Chicago Bulls fans, especially holding on to Alex Caruso, expecting to get so many so much attention in terms of what you guys are going to get. He's a sought-out commodity, a guy that can fit any team realistically, and you guys just get Josh Giddey. Okay. Okay. I guess that's what you guys want to do. But moving on, let's move on to Monty Williams being fired from the Detroit Pistons. Recently just got hired last season, especially off that stint with the Phoenix Suns, making the NBA Finals and then struggling in the second round before he got fired, and then got hired last season by the Detroit Pistons. Obviously, given the keys to the kingdom there in Detroit, with a 5-year, $78 million deal. Ironically, what 4-year, $78 million deal Malik Monk just signed for. I didn't think Monty Williams was the right guy for the job, especially after we just saw his turmoil relationship with DeAndre Ayton and seeing how that is. And it's like, can you connect with young players? Yes, you had Chris Paul, which was a struggle. You had Anthony Davis, I believe, before he left there. I think he had Anthony Davis. Had Devin Booker, had DeAndre Ayton, and that we saw how that ended. Had Mikal Bridges, had Cam Johnson. So there was some success there. But him walking out of that, just out of that realm there of the Phoenix Suns and going and moving on to the Detroit Pistons, I'm like, okay, let's see what Monty does. Let's give guys the benefit of the doubt. Let's see what he does. In that stretch from Monty Williams, they lost 28 games in a row. And maybe that's by design. And I'm going to look at it from both sides. Maybe that was the design. Maybe to tank and get the first round pick. And get the first pick in the draft, trade it, see what asset collection you can get from that first round pick. Maybe some contracts. They got Evan Fournier in the contract. At the time, they had Bogdanovich. They made some moves there. And that didn't help. They got the 5th pick in the draft, so that didn't help. Then, over the course of the season, you play Killian Hayes over Jaden Ivey. That was strike one for me. That was strike 1 and 2 for me. Because there's no way in hell that you think Killian Hayes is a better basketball player than Jaden Ivey, who's your recently drafted pick, who was a 4th pick in the draft. I just don't think that makes any sense. And maybe there was something there with Cade Cunningham and some. You play those two guys together and you figure it out later. That's how I look at it. Playing Killian Hayes, and people are saying they're trying to boost his draft value. That did not help. Let's be honest, that did not help. Playing Killian Hayes, who's now out of the league, who got released, who they were trying to force feed down Detroit Pistons' throat and make it seem like it was going to work. He's not in the NBA right now. He's not on the roster. So to go from that, and that's strike 1. Number 2, playing Jalen Duren and Isaiah Stewart at the 4 together, playing both those big guys together, didn't work. Maybe in 2008 that would have worked, playing those two guys together. But in today's modern NBA, that's not going to work. And I love Jalen Duren. I love his double-double potential. And he's a man-child at just 20 years old. Love his game. I thought he was a big pick in the draft. I thought the Knicks were going to get him. They ended up trading. I thought Charlotte was going to get him. There was something there with the Knicks and Charlotte with Mark Williams and Jalen Duren. Whatever the case may be, he ended up in Detroit. They traded Marvin Bagley for James Wiseman, whatever the variation of that trade was. So now you have 3 bigs that you're trying to figure out what to do. I don't understand that move at all. The GM got fired for the Detroit Pistons, thank God. And Monty Williams was basically a sitting duck. Those couple of moves that he did, not playing the right guys, and I thought Detroit was going to be better. And they're a young team. They were going to get their ass kicked. I thought they were going to be better. But to lose 28 games in a row was crazy. It's fucking crazy. And do I think that Monty Williams is going to be in position for another job? Of course. Now, is he going to want to sit on his ass and collect, $65 million and basically think about his NBA future? I would probably lean that way. Because I'm looking at Monty Williams as a guy kind of like Stan Van Gundy, who the Pistons are probably still paying from his tenure. Another guy, the one thing the Detroit Pistons front office is going to do is waste some damn money. They're going to waste some money. I just think about the Josh Smith, Greg Monroe, Andre Drummond front line that they paid maximum amount of dollars with Charlie Villanueva and Ben Gordon. That's years ago. That's nearly a decade ago. But ultimately, he just didn't fit. And Detroit was crazy to throw that amount of money at him. But on the flip side, Monty Williams would have been crazy for turning that money down. Maybe it was just a shitty situation. It was a quick money grab, whatever the case may be. But he's going to get paid. I believe he got a buyout from Phoenix as well. He's going to get paid from the Detroit Pistons. So you're roughly looking at what? Nearly $100 million for an NBA coach who hasn't produced any wins in the past couple seasons. In the last 2 seasons, at least. So looking at it from that standpoint, Detroit Pistons are dumb. Whoever's in charge now is making the right moves. I think you should clean house, get a fresh slate with this young team. I can't remember if it's one of the Thompson twins. Let me look it up here. Have it up in the background. Thompson. Sarah Thompson, who I like, kind of like a Sean Marion type. And you have Jaden Ivey. You have Cade Cunningham. You have Jalen Duren. You have Isaiah Stewart, who I think they should trade and try to flip and get some picks. Get some other shooting around them, get this team a little bit more modernized. Play faster. There's rumors about James Borrego, who I think will be a good coach. Charlotte should have never fired him because they were heading in the right direction, and they just fired him. I don't think that was dumb, and then they hired Steve Clifford again. That was dumb. They do have Charles Lee now, but I thought James Borrego was a good coach for the Charlotte Hornets, who got cut too early, in my opinion. But Detroit, do this right. You actually have a young core that's intriguing. Get the right coach in there. Give him some time. Give him some actual pieces such as shooters and make it right. This should not be hard for Detroit. You're in a perfect position. And I know it's crazy. I know it's crazy. People are going to be looking like, what do you mean perfect position? You have a young core and you have a clean slate. No one's expecting anything from you guys. But the one thing you can do is hire the right coach and give them the right tools to be successful. The NBA can't be this hard, man. The way these teams are making moves and doing dumb shit and making it look like goddamn rocket science is crazy to me. And let me rephrase that. It's not easy to win in the NBA. Being a Celtic fan for the past couple of years, it's not easy to win. Certain shit happens, but the one thing the Boston Celtics have been able to do is give themselves a chance. The one thing Oklahoma City has been able to do over the past couple of years is give themselves a chance with right building and retention and building a team. Minnesota, as bad as it looked at times, has given themselves now a chance to win by opening the door and building an actual roster. Indiana, you look at Indiana, who just did that, who was clicking on all cylinders before Tyrese Halliburton got hurt. At least giving your team a chance to be successful. Detroit Pistons, you are in a position right now with a young core to at least see some cracks of light rather than darkness. The Pistons haven't been relevant since what? 2009? I believe they were 8th seed against Cleveland. Let's rephrase that. 2008 when they made the Eastern Conference Finals. They made the playoffs, I believe, in 2017 or 18 with Blake Griffin on one leg. But the one thing that they have to do is give your team a chance to be successful. And that's not something that the Detroit Pistons are doing. Hopefully now, with the firing of the GM, I believe it's Troy Weaver, whatever the hell his name is, who's been a clusterfuck, firing Monty Williams, ironically, just a week before the draft. And that's another thing. All these teams firing coaches and doing all this stuff a week before the draft. How am I supposed to feel as a draft pick coming in? How am I supposed to feel as a free agent coming in unless I'm just taking your money? Detroit has a lot of cap space. But unless I'm in those two situations where I'm just, how am I supposed to look at your franchise? You're firing your coach a week before the draft. Obviously, who they're hiring forward has an idea what this team needs and looking into it and has been examining the draft for potential looks. That's what coaches and that's what the ownership, that's what people are hiring the coaches are looking at. Hey, what do you think about roster? What can you maximize? What changes would you make? What you look in the draft? But firing your coach and your GM a couple weeks before the draft, when you knew this was supposed to happen at the end of the season, it's now June. The Detroit Pistons season was over by December. But let's be honest, the NBA season ends in April for most of these teams who do not make the playoffs. And you waited until June? What the fuck is going on? Yeah, I gotta start applying for these GM jobs. Just pay me, just pay me what? $250K? Let's make it work. What are we doing as organizations? Like, what are you doing around the league? Like, these are people who put in tremendous hours of scouting, information gathering, trying to get the right stuff. And over again, we continue to see these organizations, Washington, Detroit, Chicago, Toronto, Orlando for the longest time was like that. Sacramento was like that for the longest time besides the last couple of years. And these teams that just make boneheaded fucking hires, fucking moves. And I'm surprised how these teams still have fans. Orlando, I understand. Sacramento, I understand. They at least had players that looked intriguing on the upside. But teams like Chicago, who have just been fucking around, teams like Toronto, ever since Kawhi left, and that's not an easy thing to lose a star like that and rebuild with the aging roster. I understand that, but they're in a better position. They have Scotty Barnes at least. But just looking at what these teams are doing consistently is mind-boggling. I don't understand it. And especially Detroit has been a clusterfuck for a long time. I don't understand what they're doing. But yes, Monty Williams with $65 million left on the table. He's going to be chilling on that money. I believe recently his wife has been, his new wife has been diagnosed with cancer. So prayers out to him and his family and stuff like that. So that's definitely tough and not easy to deal with. But in terms of NBA stuff, $65 million, go sort out your life. It's been tremendous. He's been trying to coach through it. Just go take a break, man, before you get back into coaching, at least. But yeah, Detroit, you have a chance here to have a new, fresh light. Please do that. Continuing on here, moving on to Pascal Siakam signed an extension with the Indiana Pacers, 4 years, $189.5 million. Just the right move for Indiana. They traded for Pascal. Obviously, this was a free agent move. Obviously, you don't have a lot of free agents coming to Indiana. Able to take a swing here and get Pascal Siakam. I thought it was a good move in retrospect because they needed somebody who at least be another scorer, creator, and stuff like that on the offensive end. In the playoffs, he had 21.6 per game, 7.5 rebounds, 3.8 assists. He's a good player. Fits well with Tyrese Halliburton and what they're doing there in Indiana. It doesn't look like they're going to be able to keep TJ McConnell. I don't know if they're going to extend him. It's most likely going to be a sign and trade. They do have Benedict Mathurin. They have Jace Walker, Jalen Smith, Aaron Naismith, obviously Tyrese Halliburton, who they also extended. So Tyrese Halliburton and Pascal Siakam are going to be together for a while here. And it looks like it's a good move for both Indiana. They got to the Eastern Conference Finals despite Hooker Crook in the Eastern Conference with all the injuries and stuff like that. Whatever. They got there. But at least they understand that they have to continue to build. And re-signing Pascal Siakam was the right move, in my opinion. Looking at the Indiana as a whole, figuring out what they're going to do with Miles Turner. I believe he's up for an extension. Let me look here. Yep, he's up for an extension, but can't sign until the end of the year next season. So they have to figure out what they're going to do with that, if they're going to use that as a trade chip to add more to their team. Obviously, they just need some more shooting and some defensive additions and continue to just build around Tyrese and Pascal Siakam. But Indiana's in the right direction. Different from fucking Chicago and different from fucking Detroit and all these other teams that don't know what the fuck they're doing. At least Indiana's at least looking at their roster saying, hey, we got something here. Let's continue to build. Let's invest in these guys and see what we can do going forward. I like that for Indiana. They took a swing trading Domantas Sabonis for Tyrese Halliburton. It's worked out for them tremendously. It's worked out for them. And if it wasn't for injuries, probably would have been a higher seed in the playoffs. Looking at what they're doing with Benedict Mathurin, they traded Buddy Hield, who looked like he was gunshot in Philadelphia, and that worked out for them tremendously. Aaron Naismith has become a player. TJ McConnell made a name for himself. And just seeing what else they can get out of this. Andrew Nembhard has become a folk hero in Indiana, and we'll see what they're going to be able to do with him going forward, as well as he is possibly up for a contract extension upcoming. But Indiana's in a good place here with Tyrese Halliburton and Pascal Siakam moving forward. I know there's some worry about paying Pascal Siakam $50 million at 32 years old. The cap is going to go up. The new TV deal is about to hit that just hit. The cap is going to be crazy going up. So I'm not too worried about that. I think that they're going to be fine moving forward, and looking at what Indiana is able to do here moving forward is going to be intriguing, especially with some pieces that they can move and some additions that they can make. But Tyrese Halliburton and Pascal Siakam are going to be a part of that future for the Indiana Pacers. And I like that for them. We'll see what they're able to do. People are saying get Paul George back and seeing what they can do there. I don't know. But obviously adding another star to this team would be ideal. I don't know who you're going to get to come to Indiana. Maybe it's going to be a savvy move. Somebody's going to get disgruntled, and maybe they can make a small move to really bluster their team. And we'll see what they're able to do. But they've been a fun team last season, revelation, especially in the in-season tournament. Ended up losing in the end. But definitely some young, energetic vibes with this Indiana team, especially with Rick Carlisle able to transform this team and get them playing in a style of basketball that fits Tyrese Halliburton in this roster. Let's see if they're able to continue to build like that. But first extension of the offseason is Pascal Siakam. Good move for Indiana. Moving on to another guy who just got signed. Malik Monk. who has been tremendous for the Sacramento Kings. LA let him go. The Lakers let him go. I don't understand that. I felt like he would have been a good piece for them right now. But ended up in Sacramento and finally found a home, extending his contract there 4 years, $78 million for the Sacramento Kings. And I like what the Kings are doing as well. After years of being shit, after years of being crap, have finally put it together and said, hey, let's continue to build this team, extending De'Aaron Fox, extending Domantas Sabonis. They got Keegan Murray, tradable contracts like Kevin Huerter and Harrison Barnes, who they should instantly flip and try to get some more defense, get some guys in there that fit their future going forward, some guys that are young on longer contracts that can be flexible for your team long term, and really try to flip those guys and get somebody and try to continue to build this team. I like what Sacramento's doing. Unfortunately, randomly missed the playoffs, just didn't have that same energy from 2 years ago when they went up against the Golden State Warriors in the playoffs. But ultimately, I like what they're doing. They're continuing to find assets, the guys that work together, get a big to help Domantas Sabonis down there on the defensive end that can clean and help him and spread the floor. Keegan Murray looks like he's going to be that third option for them. I like that for them going forward, spacing-wise, modern-wise, and they just have to get him being aggressive more. De'Aaron Fox is becoming one of the best guards in the NBA, continuing to build on that. But Sacramento has some moves to make, I think, that can benefit them. Keeping Malik Monk is a good idea, and this, even if they end up moving on from him in a year or two, that's a tradable contract with the cap going up, and they have at least some moves and some assets that they can make. And I'm really liking what Sacramento's doing as a team. Moving forward here, obviously, again, signing Domantas Sabonis after that extension, De'Aaron Fox, but Harrison Barnes, Kevin Huerter, Trey Lyles even could be a trade part piece. Davion Mitchell, who they can look to move on from. Keon Ellis is a young guy that they have under contract, so they can move on from Davion Mitchell and get some good picks for him as well. But I think there's some moves for Sacramento here to make and be a better team going forward and make the playoffs, damn it. You guys had Arco Reno like the beam. Cal Bell's back in Arco Reno in Sacramento. Good for that small market. Get back to that. You guys had a taste of that with this team. I don't understand what happened last season, but get back to that. You guys deserve to be in the playoffs, and you guys are a better team out in the Western Conference than you showed last season. So retention with Sabonis, Fox, Monk, Keegan Murray going forward. Yes, that's the move. Just figure out how to add pieces to accelerate you guys back into the playoffs, man, because you guys have a position in the Western Conference is tough. You got the Grizzlies coming back. OKC just made a move. Dallas is going to be back. Denver's obviously not going to leave the discussion. The Clippers are trying to figure out what they're doing with Paul George. There's room there. I think Houston's going to be on the up and up. Utah is probably going to move on from marketing at some point. But they do have Keontae George as well. So we'll see what happens in Utah. But Sacramento, get back to the playoffs. You guys are a good enough team to do that. Definitely a good team to do that. But yeah, the NBA season's here, man. NBA off season's here. The draft is next week. Now I'm not going to sit here and act like I know about what's going on in the draft. I'm not going to sit there and know all the college players. But the draft is next week. I'm going to be interested to see what trades are around that. And the NBA off season's kicking up. Summer League's going to kick off in a couple weeks, I believe. So that's going to be picking up as well. We're going to be looking at all the teams making moves, looking at the new rosters in a couple of weeks. And the NBA just doesn't stop. The Boston Celtics just won the championship on Monday. Parade on Friday, this morning. And we're already going into the draft next week. Coaches are getting hired. Teams are making moves, extensions, trades. It's still going to happen. It's still going on. I'm excited for the NBA season, man. But if you got it this far into the video, like, comment, and subscribe. Thank you for watching. And until next time, I'm going to continue going on with the NBA offseason, and I can't wait to talk about that. Putting up some 2K clips as well. Also, check out our podcast Ring Takes, covering WWE, AEW, all things wrestling on that side of things. But thank you for joining me, and until next time.